Going to take you live next back to the Republican National Committee winter meeting in Washington, and their panel next looking at the rising stars of the GOP. It's just getting started.
Stars panel and our first group of rising stars at our last meeting in Boston when we were last together. And so I am so honored to have the opportunity to be here today with our new group of our rising stars, and I'm honored to introduce them to our committee as well as to also introduce them to the media and the world. When we look at what we're doing at the RNC, we're looking and reaching out to make sure that we are not just, again, talking to women, we are empowering women, we are training women, we are going around the country making sure that we find dynamic women that want to run for office like these individuals or run for something, again, in a stronger position. And we're not just talking about it or talking to them. We're going out there and we are reaching them, we are training them, we are empowering them. We're working with them to make sure that they understand fundraising, ground room gains, messaging, media events, communications, whatever it may be, that those individuals and these young women and more women around the country that share our principles and share our values, that they understand the importance of what we're going to do together. So when we look at these individuals, we know that you're going to see them in the days ahead as you did our last Rising Stars. These are the Rising Stars. This is our party's future. And with that, it is my honor to introduce the chairman of the Republican National Committee, a great partner and somebody that does truly understand the importance of strong, principled, and empowered women across the country. Reince Priebus.
All right, thank you, Sharon. And as always, appreciate all of your work and our great partnership together. The Rising Stars program is something that we started about a year ago, and it is part of our effort, on top of highlighting different voices in our party. It's part of our more formal effort to have different people and train different people to start speaking for our party, both regionally and nationally, that we show America that we have a party that looks like America. And we try to find dynamic people across the country that can help us achieve that goal, that want to step up to the plate and lead this country. And so that's what this program is all about, and we're really proud of where we're at. I wanted to quickly introduce the folks that you see up here and just give you a little bit of background about each of them. First of all, to my right, to your left, Chelsea Henry serves as Senior Advisor to the elected Chief Financial Officer of the state of Florida. In 2012, at the Republican National Convention, she was highlighted in National Journal, National Review, TV One, and MTV, among others. She was a speaker at CPAC 2013, selected for Red Alert Politics 30 Under 30, and recognized as one of BET's 10 Republicans to watch. Chelsea is a serial entrepreneur and says she is a perpetual optimist when it comes to the grand old party. That's very good. You need to be. Chelsea holds a JD from Florida Coastal School of Law and an undergraduate degree from the University of North Florida. So please welcome Chelsea Henry. To the right of Chelsea, and that's maybe appropriate, I don't know, because you'll see the bio. Allison Howard is a conservative activist who speaks on pro-life and pro-family issues. Allison has appeared on radio and TV outlets across the country, including The Sean Hannity Show, Fox and Friends, and NPR. She currently serves as Communications Director for Concerned Women for America and represents CWA at colleges, high schools, and conferences around the country. So please welcome Allison Howard. Now to your right, notice I avoided the left, to your right, Alex Smith is National Chair for the College Republican National Committee, the CRs, making her the first female elected as National CR Chairman in its 120-year history. She's a native of Pennsylvania and a graduate of the Catholic University of America. She formerly served as National Co-Chairman during the 2012 cycle, as Chairman of the D.C. Federation of College Republicans, and as Chapter Leader for the Catholic University College Republicans. She's currently a student at Seton Hall University School of Law. Please welcome Chairman Alex Smith. And next to her, is Kimberly Yee. She represents Arizona's 20th Legislative District in the State Senate and is the first Asian American woman elected to serve in the Arizona Legislature. She is chairman of the Senate Committee on Education. Before she was elected to office, she worked for State Treasurer Dean Martin and in the United States Department of Justice. She also served as a member of Governor Schwarzenegger's cabinet and on the State Board of Education under California Governor Pete Wilson. Kimberly and her husband are also small business owners and live in Phoenix with their young son. Please welcome Kimberly Yee. And the best for last, we've got Monica Youngblood in her first term in New Mexico's House of Representatives. She is on the board of the RSLC's Future Majority Project and was named as one of GOPAC's 2013 Emerging Leaders. She's a native of New Mexico and was raised by a single mother in Albuquerque. At age 19, Monica also became a single mother, but as she says, she was determined to end the cycle of poverty. So she set out to give her daughter a better life. Monica now runs a successful real estate business and also works as a marketing consultant. She and her husband, Chris, have 2 children between them. So please welcome our newest RNC Rising Stars. Now, we're going to have an opportunity for all of you to get up and ask questions at the mic. So I'm going to ask each of our participants 2 questions. We'll try to move quickly, and then we're going to open up the mic. So first question is to Chelsea. Chelsea, you've said that you were the first Republican in your family. So the first question is why, and what about the Republican Party appealed to you? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, again, I'm Chelsea Henry, born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida. My mother had me when she was 16 years old. For the first few years of my life, we were on welfare. And so, for me growing up, I learned at a very early age the value of a dollar. I learned how to live on a budget. I learned the phrase that we often hear, delayed gratification, and what that means. Because when there was something that we wanted, we saved, we planned for it. And so when I think about conservatism, and I think about what we stand for, what we all believe in, it's less taxes, it's smaller government. And those things resonate with me because I understand, with my mom being a single parent for a decade of my life, that every dollar in her paycheck counted. I understand what it means to go to the grocery store and you want Frosted Flakes, yet you have to get the generic brand because those 80 cents matter. So I understand the value of a dollar and how it impacts families, how it impacts lives. And so for me, I'm about economic prosperity for all. I'm about a hand up and not a handout. And so that is what resonates with me when I think about the Republican message. It's because those values of what we all believe in, they are the same values I believe in and how I was raised. And so yes, first Republican in my family. No one else in my family, was a Republican, shared anything about the Republican message. But what I can tell you is that because of the sacrifices that my mother lived, I understand what it means to be a conservative. And so actually, since I've been involved the past few years, my mom is now a Republican. So the message works.
Excellent. Allison, how can the party better connect with independent women on our conservative principles?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you guys all for being here and bearing the terrible weather to come and hang out in D.C. And honestly, I think right now there's an opportunity to reach out to women on issues that really matter to them. Women make the majority of economic decisions in their households, and right now are making a majority of their healthcare decisions as well. And so for me, I think it's most important for conservatives to talk to women as the smart, intelligent, purpose-driven women that they are. We care about so much more than the left presents to us. And pandering to us for a vote is so easy to see, and women in this room will know that. But if we as conservatives can come around a message of upward mobility and talk about what limited government does for women, talking about what situations they're best in economically, sociologically, psychologically, then I think there's a really, really neat way that we can message to women, reach out to them, and tell them that they can do better than this administration has brought to them right now. And I think that we're doing that. I think it's a way forward. And things like this, where you're showing up and you're showing out that you care and you are concerned about so much, is really important.
Thank you. Alex, why is it important for Republican candidates to engage actively with young voters? But I think most importantly, what do you think some misconceptions are that we tend to have about voters in college?
Thank you so much, Chairman Previs and Co-Chairman Day, for this tremendous honor. These are two of the strongest youth allies that we have in the conservative movement, so I thank them so much for their support of college Republicans. I go around busting youth vote myths all day. And, a couple of them are that, for example, that the youth vote was an Obama phenomenon, that younger voters turned out for the president because he was cool, and they're not going to turn out that way again, so we don't need to pay that much attention to them. Well, that's not true. The youth vote has actually grown 1 percentage point per presidential cycle for the past 4 presidential elections in a row. It started out in 2000 at about 16%, went up to 19% in 2012. Let's not give the president credit for a trend that started under President Bush. The youth vote is only growing. It's growing as a percentage of our electorate, so we need to be attuned to the needs of younger voters. Another one is that younger voters will get more conservative as they get older. That's also a myth. We saw that the age demographic 30 to 34 was the only age demographic to improve for the president a second time around in 2012. So voters aren't growing up and getting more conservative. They're not going and buying a home. They're not becoming parents, these traditional things that might make one more conservative, because they can't afford it. So again, just being sensitive to that as a political party. Once a younger voter votes with a national political party twice in a presidential election, they're likely to vote that way for the rest of their life. So we really need to capture them now. These are now two rounds of votes for President Obama, so we need to be especially sensitive to that. But finally, the biggest myth out there is that younger voters are liberal. They're not. The CRNC did some research in 2013, and what we found is that younger voters agree with us on size and scope of government. What they don't do is they don't connect these fundamental values about spending and the size of government to the Republican Party brand. And so that's where we need to come in, and we need to bridge that gap.
Kimberly, you're the first Asian American woman elected in the Arizona legislature, and one of just a few in the entire country. What do you think our party can be doing better to engage more with Asian voters across the country?
Well, there are 15 million Asian Americans in this entire country, and that number is growing. And in fact, Asian immigrants are the fastest growing ethnic group in the United States. So what we're doing here on the stage today with our Rising Stars is the best start that we can do, which is reach out to these various communities and speak out about the great work that Asian American Republicans are doing from community to community across this country. And what's exciting is that when we look at Asian Americans, they are highly educated, they're higher wage earners, and for the most part, they own their own businesses. So that message, those principles of our party should resonate naturally with the Asian American population. What we need to do is to go out into the communities to be able to showcase people like, that like myself, who are in those legislative seats, to say, this is what this person is doing, and they're standing for the very same values that you hold dear in your families. And what's interesting is in 2008, when I was a delegate at the National Convention in St. Paul, I looked at the thousands of people around me on that floor, and there was no one that looked like me. And that was very telling, because when you look at a brand or you look at a group, the person will wonder, do I fit in? And it's a natural response. And so what they need to see in our party is that they can fit in. And in fact, when they are part of our group, we will embrace them, and we have so much to do for them. Part of your strategic initiative is to be able to showcase that great work. And I think we have so many opportunities before us, because these are people that we can bring back to our party. They voted exponentially higher in the George Bush administration, and then they left during the Obama run in 2012. So I believe that this is the time where we can bring them back in 2016.
No, thank you, Kimberly. Monica, you talked about the fact that you were raised by a single mom and you wanted to end this sort of cycle of poverty. Where do you see the Republican Party fitting in that fight?
Thank you, Chairman, for having me, and Co-Chair. It's an honor to be here. Growing up, my mom was always a Republican. I remember her crying when President Reagan got reelected, and I didn't understand at the time. As I've grown up, although I didn't agree with her when I was younger, I understand the Republican Party to be the party of self-reliance, of personal responsibility, of opportunity for all, no matter the color of your skin, no matter where you're from, what side of the tracks you're on. I resonate with the Republican Party because I want to determine my worth and I want to determine my success. And one thing that my mom always, when I became a young mom, which again I was rebellious and didn't want to listen to my mom, was she told me, Monica, no one will ever care more than you do about your success. No government entity, no entitlement program will ever care more about you and your success than you will. And looking back at my community, I see that unfortunately a lot of people depend and get caught up in this cycle of dependency and just never reach the success that they may have dreamed of as a young person.
Chelsea, you talked about growing up on welfare and with government assistance and going through some similar issues. What benefits, the blessings, lessons did that cause you to learn from going through something like that?
Many lessons, Mr. Chairman. And so one lesson I can say is overarching is how conservative principles work. And I say that and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, which is why I'm so passionate about being a conservative and being a Republican. Because again, every dollar counted when I grew up, you know. When it was dinner time and we had a long day, my mom had a long day at work, it was, okay, do I get 2 or 3 items off of the dollar menu today? And that was my biggest decision of the day. And so those lessons have continued with me, and it has allowed me to want to continue to give back and to be a public servant. In 2010, I had the opportunity to run for a local seat there in Jacksonville. I was elected, became the youngest female elected in my city's history. It was a big deal because for people in my neighborhood, they actually had never known anybody on the ballot. So when they went into the ballot box November 2010, they were able to check a name of somebody they knew, somebody they remember, somebody they can call Facebook and get a response to. And so when I think about the lessons, most importantly, it's to give back. It's to share our message because it works. We talk about war on poverty. The answer is the conservative message. It works.
All right, thank you. Picking up on what Alex was talking about, resonating on college campuses. I know, Allison, you work a whole lot on campuses across the country. What kind of lessons and what do you think we can be doing better to engage, and what's working on your end on college campuses?
Sure. Well, just kudos to Chelsea. That was an amazing answer, and I enjoy hearing everybody's stories. I think that's one of the most important things that we're doing is sharing our story. And just like Chelsea and Alex said, if you walk into someplace you don't recognize anyone that looks like you, talks like you, thinks like you don't think you fit in. So through my work at Concerned Women for America, we've been working on Young Women for America chapters, which are essentially college chapters of CWA, college chapters of conservative young women that get together each week, and some of them are like a prayer group with action items. They get together and they pray for this country and they tell each other what's going on because our young people in college are in a bubble of sorts. So to be informing them, that's what we're here to do, and that's what leaders are doing, moms, dads, everywhere. To get together and coalesce around an idea. A lot of them are doing things on their college campuses that I think you'd be really proud of. You know, the left will tell you that millennials only care about same-sex marriage and abortion. That's just not true. We have young women and young men out there that are going and combating sex trafficking, that are going and serving the homeless, that are getting into their communities, just like everyone here has outlined, and just like I think the RNC is trying to do and conservatives are working on, to be able to connect with those around you and explain to them why conservative principles work, so you can elevate yourself into a position that you want to be at. And as women, I think we have unique positions as friends, as probably the best talking gender out there, to communicate this. We're talking all the time. And what we get to do as young people especially is talk and use the platforms we have in front of us, whether that be social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or the meetings that we have. Don't complain about what the PTA is doing if you're not willing to go and be a part of it. You know, I can't talk about that if I'm not willing to serve my community in everything I believe in. So college campuses, we're starting to get some of these young leaders, pulling them in under this conservative umbrella and saying it's cool to be conservative. You know, and they're starting to see that. So if we can communicate that to them, there's a place for them here. We care about what you care about. Student loans, getting a job. What does that really look like? It's hard right now. It's hard for our young people. So if we are able to take this unique opportunity that they're seeing what big government does to their opportunities once they graduate and what their paycheck looks like if they get their first job, then I think conservatives are going to have a group of young people who really are willing to fight with passion to protect that paycheck and these principles.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so Alex, someone's running for president, and they come to you, and they say, I want to win over college students. Tell me how I can get it done. What would you tell them or her?
You know, the answer is a simple one. And one of the things that we found out in our research as a committee last year was to go where younger voters are and give them something to share. What does that mean? It means that channels and messages matter. Channels, I mean online. Going where younger voters are, again, going to Hulu, going to Pandora, going to Spotify. If you're talking to younger voters on television, on radio, or through direct mail, you're not reaching them. They're not on those channels, but they are online. They are consuming content in real time online, and that's where we need to capture them. And you know, by channels, I also mean the campus. I always say to candidates when we have the opportunity to speak about best practices and tactics is that if you're too afraid to go to a campus to, you know, and because of the environmental club is going to come out and protest you or something, a couple of kids with a banner, you know, you are leaving the weight of our work as a party on the shoulders of 18-year-old college Republicans who have to carry it alone. So candidates must go to campus. They must engage with younger voters, again, where they are. And then the messaging matters, too. I'll give you a perfect example. In our research, what we found was the term big government was a nebulous one with younger voters. They didn't understand what we meant when we asked them in our focus groups. We said, how do you feel about a candidate who proposes to fight big government? They're like, government, you know, big government, you mean like the windows there are too many windows, the buildings are too big, what are you talking about? Problem is, for younger voters, big isn't scary. Big is this. Big is getting a million followers on Twitter and being able to send a message out to all of them in an instant. What is scary to younger voters is an intrusive government. So again, it's just about the language that we use to describe this. If we talk about reducing government spending, if we talk about fixing big entitlement programs like Social Security and Medicare, the things that we mean when we say big government. We just say them differently to younger voters in a language that's relevant to them. That's what's really going to matter. But I mean, what matters the most is just talking to younger voters. I mean, it's just a basic tenet of human-to-human interaction. If someone's not talking to you, they don't think that you care about them very much. Right. And you know, we need to be talking to younger voters and showing them that we want to earn their votes as a party.
Thank you. Kimberly, you have effectively used a pro-life message to resonate with voters. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, you know, I have the opportunity in the Senate to sponsor a lot of bills. I do education policies, tort reform, public safety, but I will tell you that the pro-life legislation that I sponsor and I see passed in both of our houses, that's the legislation that is the most meaningful. That's the legislation that tugs at my heartstrings. As a woman, as a new mother of a 4-month-old, you know, I can relate to these issues about women and how it affects their individual lives. And really about the health and safety of women when we're talking about these practices, and ensuring that someone out there is standing for those little tiny babies that can't otherwise speak for themselves. And those are the things that we share, that I share when I go out into my community and I knock on the doors and I talk to these moms and their families. They're the ones that are often making the decision for their household about who to vote for in the next election. And so as a woman, I really feel that we have to share that story. And I often go back to, I was the sponsor of the ultrasound legislation in Arizona that allows a woman who's getting ready to have an abortion to see the ultrasound image before she moves forward with that decision. And I sponsored the 20-week ban bill that the U.S. Supreme Court unfortunately just rejected. Now, those are the bills that I have to share. You know, there was a nurse that testified on the bill, and she said when she turned that monitor to this young teenage couple that came in for an abortion in the clinic, the young teenage boy put his hand over his mouth. He was moved with emotion. He said, "That's our baby." And guess what? They ended up, that young couple ticked up, turned around, walked out of that clinic, and they kept that precious child. And those are the stories that matter, and those are the stories that I hope to continue to share. Because once they hear the significant gains that we have made in Arizona with this passage of many of these pro-life bills, we have decreased abortions 7% year over year, and that's about 1,000 babies that have been saved. Now, we have much more work to do, but this is a start, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Thank you, Kimberly. And the last question before we open up the mics goes to Monica. We told you she was from New Mexico. She's been successful running for office, heavily Hispanic community. What do you think the secret is for winning over Hispanic voters?
You know, in New Mexico, we are very much Hispanic population. We concentrate on talking about issues. You know, reminding people the American dream. It's never depicted in movies as an entitlement program. It's always achieving your goals and reaching that. Governor Martinez has done an amazing job at being relatable to Hispanics and to people that live in New Mexico, letting them know that we are important. We don't talk about party a lot of the time. We talk about issues. We talk about conservative issues with Democrats across the state because we need for them to vote for us. And it's worked. We've just elected in Albuquerque, we elected Mayor Berry to his second term, which had never been done before. So, and we will re-elect Governor Martinez because people in New Mexico know that she is and feel like they can relate to her. So that is my, the advice to across the nation as far as bringing Hispanics in, understanding their issues, and not really asking them to change their party, but to really vote the issues that concern them and their families.
Excellent. Thank you. And what do you think about our rising stars? Pretty impressive, right?
Chairman, if I could,
go ahead.
If I could say something real quick too, and I think we saw the other rising stars that we saw last have done great works for us before, but I'm very thankful, very proud that our communications department and our committee, if you look up here at this stage, we sent 5 dynamic, as you've seen and heard, extraordinary women. So thank you for that as we send out again the communications wide. Very proud of you, and thank you for all that you do, and thank you for the communications department for again understanding these unbelievable rising stars.
Questions?
You guys did so good. You did great. That's why they're the rising stars.
Freddie Simpson, Washington State. I live in the middle of the state where we have no major industry, so we are all agriculture. And so immigration reform is huge for us. How do you, as women, address this? Because, I know we can tiptoe around issues and we can talk issues without saying we're Republicans or necessarily we hit on pro-life, or, we sort of tiptoe around some of the dangerous, what some people consider as dangerous subjects. How do you address when people ask you your stance on immigration reform?
Well, why don't we start with Allison and move this way?
I'm with Concerned Women for America. So we don't take a position on immigration necessarily, so I might not be the best one to talk to on this panel. But I think an easy way for us to address it is to protect the borders and enforce the law. And that's something I think that the RNC is all they've said, too, is really to just, we need immigration reform to make better gains in that community. Obviously, it's something you're dealing with. I think it's something a lot of women are dealing with, and it's a growing conversation, so it's important. And I look forward to hearing how you guys think we can deal with it as well.
Monica, Chelsea, go ahead.
I think being a lot of times immigration reform, it's directed to Latinas and Latinos across our country. And I think that at a state level, you really have to understand that there is nothing that, I mean, we depend on the federal government to do their job. I think we need to embrace immigration reform. I think we need to, we took, the Senate took a step, in the right direction, and we're waiting to see how it plays out in the House. But I think at the state level, and I get the question all the time, I think at the state level, we really have to look to the federal government for guidance on this issue and really just embrace that it needs to be done and be compassionate in doing that.
Chelsea.
I agree with what both of the Rising Stars have said, and that is we have to embrace immigration reform. Exactly what that looks like, I think that has to continue to be worked out. But I think there needs to be a solution, and the conversation needs to continue.
Anyone else? Kimberly?
Well, remember, I come from Arizona, the state of 1070, so I've got a few things to say about immigration reform. Absolutely. We need to wrap our arms carefully, diligently around comprehensive immigration reform. We cannot delay. Coming from a southwestern border state, we see it every day. And so the first and foremost thing that I would encourage for those developers of whatever plan we will soon see is please listen to the border states. Hear us out. We need to share the issues that we deal with day in and day out. The businesses, the families, all of them are affected daily by the immigration, those who are coming undocumented across our lines. And so this is a conversation we have got to wrap our arms around. It's not easy. It's going to take some time. But as Republicans, I think the messaging that we should have is that we are for every community, and we stand for what they want. So we need to bring everyone to the table and do that successfully.
Alex?
Sure. So I represent college Republicans. We don't take a formal stance on issues, but what I will say is that this is an issue that we studied carefully in our 2013 research. If voting had started at age 30, Governor Romney would be president today. So the youth vote moved the election to President Obama. A growing number of that youth vote is young Hispanics. So this was an issue that we studied carefully in 2013, and it's one where we found that the language of compassion and dignity could go a long way to just starting a dialogue with younger voters, being careful about the way we choose our words and being diligent about explaining our positions.
Perfect. Any other questions? Paul.
Paul South from Florida. I'd like for each one to comment on what Governor Huckabee said at lunch today. The Democrats have promoted this myth about a war on women, and he suggested, saying another way, that maybe we have a war for women, and we take the offensive because we've got great rising stars like we have today.
Why don't we start with Alex, this war on women rhetoric, opinions on that?
I'll tell you what, so, when we study the youth vote, when we look at the composition of it, younger single female voters are a huge part of it, and they have unique needs as a demographic. For example, more women are entering into higher education and postgraduate degrees than men at this point. What does that mean? It means that college affordability becomes a very big issue. It means that student loans come to the forefront of everyone's mind, getting a job after graduation. So women are not monolithic voters. They're not centered around just a few issues, and I think that younger female voters are especially concerned about the state of the economy and in terms of creating a destiny and a future for themselves and for their families.
Kimberly?
The phrase war on women is really just a liberal democratic tactic that they use in the media that cannot be proven, because here we are examples of women in this country. We are conservatives and we stand for families, and they cannot ever define, when they use that phrase, what that really means, because we are real examples that live day to day, and we stand for conservative values. We stand for government out of our business and out of our homes. And just wait, because Obamacare will be telling, they will see, everyone, all of the women across the country will see that government intrusion in the lives of our families will be enough, and we will see that turnaround soon enough. Unfortunately, we will have to work towards getting that message out, that we have real examples, and we are just a start right here on the stage.
All right, thank you. Monica.
I agree. I mean, I think the war on women is a tagline that just got picked up in the media, and unfortunately, I myself was accused of a war on women, and I'm a woman, and I have a daughter, and I really was very confused by the concept. But again, it was a tagline that caught. I think it was a reckless tagline, because you look across the world, and there are women truly suffering through a war on them. I mean, a war on women. And we used it and threw it around, our media did, and it made it into a conservative or Republican Democrat issue where it shouldn't have been.
Chelsea?
When I heard war on women, I would just think to myself, what war on women? As it was shared before, you have 5 amazing young women up here who are contributing to their communities, contributing to their states, contributing to the party, Mr. Chairman. So what this is about is just the normal political rhetoric. But what we show here today, and what you've done, Mr. Chairman, is show them that we are for women. We are for women being in leadership. I think about Governor Martinez, Governor Haley. Let's highlight the fact that they are in office. We have 2 representatives with us here today. That's the war for women. We're showing them that they're, we don't even have to use the word war. It's about what do our results show.
Thank you. Allison.
Thanks. I think that's a good question, really relevant. So the war on women, speaking to that, is directly the left's attempt to narrow women down to one-issue voters. And that's not true. We know that. On both sides, women look at a broad spectrum of issues, fiscal, economic, and social. But the war for women is an attempt for women's vote, because it's a large demographic, a huge voting bloc, and we should be honored so much that people are trying to figure out what we care about enough to speak to us. Now, conservatives have an opportunity to speak to women about the broad spectrum of issues, not just one, because the question is, in this country right now, what are you willing to pay for? The President's health care law has put that before us. What are you willing to pay for? And for many of us, for many families, I'm not really willing to pay for many families someone else's anything, because it's tight. Especially not something I might morally disagree with and religiously disagree with. That's why you see the war on women, to me, Paul, is Little Sisters of the Poor. That group of Catholic nuns who is and was forced to sue the administration because they were being asked to fund something that they disagree with. And that this administration is forcing Catholic nuns to pay for birth control when they've taken a vow of chastity should enrage us as women and as men, protectors of life. So if we can take that back onto our terms and explain that we're the party of compassion, of restoring dignity, I think we're doing that. It doesn't just look like politics and public policy. It looks like demanding dignity and honesty in the media, demanding dignity and honesty in the music that your children are listening to, and demanding honesty and authenticity in those who are speaking to women. We are not monolithic, as we said. We care about so many issues. The Conservative Party is the one that's willing to talk to women about those issues.
Thank you. Pat Longo.
Hi. I'm a National Committee woman from Connecticut, and I'm a member of the Resolutions Committee. Yesterday we passed a resolution, was initially entitled The War on Women. We changed it, I can't remember to what. However, we're focused mostly in that resolution on the life issue. In my experience, there's not much talk among women about the glass ceiling. It goes beyond that. It always comes down to the life issue. Now, I noticed yesterday at the rally there were many young people in support of life, which is quite a change. Last night, new polls came out. I think it was Fox News poll, but 48% of Americans polled, those polled, were pro-life, 45 pro-choice. And what we emphasized in the resolution yesterday were the statistics on how many people support parental notification, maybe a 24-hour waiting period, maybe, what do you call that test you have? Yeah. So, in my experience, every time we address issues on women, it always comes down to the choice issue. Sharon, you came to a luncheon in Connecticut last summer. What did the ladies talk about? Life issue. So, hopefully the entire membership will pass that resolution tomorrow. Thank you, Chairman.
Pat. Bill Armistead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Chairman, for bringing forth such wonderful rising stars, both this time and before. We all realize how important it is for us to get the youth vote and the female vote if we're going to win the presidency again. So my question is, how important is it to have a female or a youthful person on the ticket in 2016, and do you see one being more important than the other?
A good question. Why don't we start with Allison? We'll try to be quick on these answers.
I like the juxtaposition there, female or youthful. I think it's important that people see someone that they understand believes in what they believe in. And whether that's a male or a female, I think people are understanding that this is a person that runs the country and deals with international affairs. So I think people are just looking for someone that speaks up for what they truly believe in at the end of the day.
Chelsea?
I agree. And so why not have a youthful woman? Why not just put them together, huh? But at the end of the day, it's about people being able to see someone represent them that they can relate to, that they can trust, and that they can believe in.
I think it's about being relatable, and I think we still on policy we still need to talk about policy and see where people stand. But being relatable is important to young people and us women, I think, too.
I absolutely agree that if we are going to be politically strategic in the 2016 elections, and if Hillary Rodham Clinton is going to be one of their candidates, then we absolutely need to consider a woman on our ticket. And it's easy to do because there's a lot of leaders out there that you can choose from. And what will be very important, though, is to really place the female element, I guess, because when we were talking about the importance of showing our party as a compassionate party, one that stands for families, that's what a woman can do on that ticket.
Alex.
You know, when we talk about the youth vote, we're really talking about young female voters. We're talking about young Hispanic voters. Those are huge subsets of what we kind of generally refer to as the youth vote. So, you know, in terms of having someone that will be attractive to both young people and females, or young females, I should say, I mean, we're really talking about one and the same when we talk about this demographic. Authenticity is tremendously important to young people, just being who you are. But again, if you're not talking to younger voters where they are about that true self, about your positions, clearly explaining to them, showing that you care by showing up on their campus, by running a thoughtful social media strategy and advertising to them online, then they're not going to be able to see that. So truthfully, the candidate who goes where younger voters are and speaks to them in language that's relevant to them is going to be the candidate that succeeds.
Right. I mean, real and authentic is key, because with the communication that we have now in this country and among young voters, among all of us now, real and close has to be the case in order to make a connection. Last question to Jason. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Halliburton from Atlanta, Georgia. This goes to Monica Youngblood and Kimberly Lee. I'm first-generation American. My family's originally from the island of Jamaica. Those people that normally come from the Caribbean are very conservative, and for whatever reason they come here and they don't identify with the right party. My question to Monica and Kimberly is, how were you able to remove the D and the R and connect to people on one-on-one basis? And if there was one particular issue, what was that issue to help your message connect? Thank you.
You know, for me, it was really talking about and prosperity. We talked about the housing bubble. I've talked about we saw a lot of foreclosures and short sales in our state, and when you talk to people about how people were walking away from their homes or they were getting bailed out, I mean, people really resonated with that. The life issue is another issue with conservative Democrats in our state that they will relate to us with. But I really think when you go back to the American dream and freedom to prosper, you know, that is really where we identify with one another. I don't ask anyone to change their party. I really just ask them to think about the things that I stand for and to vote for me if they agree.
Kimberly.
I also share with them a personal story, you know, how my grandfather opened up a small little laundry business in the heart of downtown Pittsburgh, and my maternal grandfather opened up one of the first local corner grocery stores in Phoenix, Arizona. They came with nothing to this country, but they were brave men who were for their families. They did this for their future. And so when I share that story, it really does resonate. And just, you know, eating at a restaurant, I'll talk to a local restaurant owner and I'll say, you know, they'll find out I'm a Republican and an Asian and they don't understand I'm a strange animal. And I'll share with them, well, you know, we have a lot in common. We own businesses, and I ask them, do you want that hard-earned money that you work so hard for every single day, do you want the government to take that out of your pocket? Or do you want to be able to keep that in your pocket and use it the way that you want to use it? That's a small little principle, but just having that conversation with these individuals, one by one, face-to-face, putting the personal element on that, they understand, and then we can bring them over one by one that way.
Well, we clearly, I think, hit a home run with our rising stars here in Washington, D.C. Thank you to everybody up here. We're going to work with the rising stars throughout the entire year. And as I said earlier, I mean, the plan here is to show America what we've done, what success has been out there in our party. You know, we've had a lot of success. I think sometimes our party is just really lousy at bragging on it, and we've got to do a better job, and this program is part of that effort to bring new faces, new voices across this country to speak for the Republican Party. So thank you all for being here, and we've got a lot more events here coming today and tomorrow. God bless you. Thank you.